What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Thursday, February 15th, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. So it looks like Russia has put nuclear warheads in space. This is very concerning, not so much because Russia can detonate them to destroy our satellites or to generate an EMP, but because they can now launch a surprise first strike on the United States, and we would have no warning at all and no time to prepare. Okay, so this is very, very serious. Now, the mainstream media is trying to downplay the situation, and they're saying that it's some kind of anti satellite weapon and they're not sure if it's nuclear yet or not, blah, blah, blah. Okay, they're trying to downplay the severity of the situation, but based on all the available information that I've seen, it does look like Russia has deployed nuclear warheads or nuclear weapons into space, which would be a violation of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which bans any weapons of mass destruction from being put into space. Okay. So I just want to share some history with you guys. During the Cold War, the Soviets were considering something known as the fractional orbital bombardment system. And this system would launch a missile into low Earth orbit. And what it would do is rather than fly on a ballistic path, going up and then going back down, re entering Earth's atmosphere like a normal ballistic missile, it would basically stay close to Earth and circle the Earth multiple times and hit a target from an unpredictable location. Okay. And by keeping the missile close to Earth, rather than flying very high up and then re entering Earth's atmosphere like a traditional ballistic trajectory, these fractional orbital bombardment missiles would evade early warning radars that the US had set up in Canada and Alaska and along the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Okay, so basically, this missile would circle the Earth and hit us from an unpredictable location, okay? And it would not be detected by radars until that missile or warhead re enters the atmosphere. And at that point, you're talking about less than 5 minutes to react, and basically not enough time to evacuate VIPs like the president, not enough time to scramble bombers into the air. So potentially even not enough time to launch a total counterattack. And that was the big fear during the Cold War, was that Russia would put some kind of nuclear weapon into space, or they would use the fractional orbital bombardment system to hit us in a way that we wouldn't expect and our radars wouldn't pick up. And we would have basically less than 5 minutes to react, which is just not enough time to launch a counterstrike. Okay, so this would be a Soviet surprise attack on America. That's what they were planning. Now, the Russians never actually implemented this because they didn't want to violate the Outer Space Treaty, because they were afraid it would cause a new arms race in space and that America would then do the same thing. So the Soviets sidelined that idea. Okay, but they were thinking about it, and Reagan was very concerned about it. That's why he started the Strategic Defense Initiative, the Star Wars program, to have space based lasers and directed energy weapons that could destroy nuclear warheads or nuclear weapons or ballistic missiles in space, because Reagan was afraid that the Soviets were going to use these fractional missiles that would go undetected by our radars, and then they would just re-enter the atmosphere at any time, and we wouldn't know where or anything. And by having the lasers and directed energy weapons in space, we could shoot down those warheads in space. Okay. But looks like Putin went back all the way to the Cold War and he thought, okay, why don't we deploy nuclear weapons to space? This is going to be a new way to put pressure on America and to show them that we're not screwing around. Okay. And we know that this is a very serious situation because of the fact that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, is briefing the Gang of Eight today. Okay. They don't call a Gang of Eight briefing for no reason. Okay. The last major Gang of Eight briefings were during the Bush administration, right after 9/11, when the Bush administration was doing warrantless searches of people's phone lines as part of the Patriot Act to look for Al Qaeda terrorists. The Bush administration was required by the Constitution under Title 50 to brief Congress on certain activities. Okay, now it's perfectly legal for the president to only brief the Gang of Eight, which are just the leaders of both parties in the House and Senate, and then the chairman of the intelligence committees in the House and Senate. If there's a very extraordinary circumstance, that's when the Gang of Eight is used. Okay, so there has to be something very serious. It's Russian nuclear weapons in space, okay, which is a game changer. Okay, that's a game changer. Like I said, they can now deploy these warheads and we would have no warning at all. Okay, normally, if let's say Russia were to launch nuclear weapons at us, let's say they wanted to just launch a full scale nuclear attack on the United States, we would detect those missiles launching from, Western Russia and southern Russia, where their missile fields are, or in Siberia. We would detect those missiles going up into space, okay, because they're massive. They leave a huge thermal signature. Okay, it's very easy for radars to pick that up. We would immediately pick up that missile going up into space, and we would immediately be able to calculate a trajectory and a time to land. Okay, the time that the warhead would hit. Okay, but if you have the warheads already in space and they're just floating around in space, and they just position the warhead over a target and then they just release that target and drop it down onto the United States, we would not be able to detect that, okay, until that warhead is actually re-entering the atmosphere. And at that point, it's only a few minutes, less than 5 minutes before it actually lands. Okay, so that's not enough time to launch a counterstrike. Okay, by the time the president would find out, and by the time he starts punching in the nuclear codes, it would already be too late. Okay, so that's the big threat here. The big threat is now Russia can launch a surprise nuclear attack on the United States, basically rendering our early warning radars and satellites useless now. Now, does that mean that all of their nukes are going to be in space? No, that would be beyond their capability. But even if, let's say, they put 20 or 50 warheads in space, that would allow them to launch a surprise attack on some of our most critical military bases and continuity of government sites. They could, let's say, try to hit DC and take out the president and VIPs and the chain of command. They could try to hit some of our continuity of government bunkers. They could try to hit our bomber bases, okay, because 5 minutes is not enough time for a B-2 to get airborne, okay? They could try to hit our bomber bases. They could try to hit all our critical military bases with, let's say, 20 or 50 warheads, and then they would still have their regular warheads on the missiles, okay? But this would give them a surprise attack capability, okay? So this is extremely serious, and this is basically like a Cuban Missile Crisis scenario of our generation. This is extremely serious, guys. I can't stress to you how serious this is. And right now, we have a U.S. presidential doomsday plane in the air over eastern Kansas. Okay, this is a plane for the U.S. president in the event of a nuclear war. The president would go on this plane and command the entire U.S. military, including U.S. nuclear forces, from this plane. Okay, and this plane was airborne yesterday as well. And we had a lot of nuclear warplane activity yesterday over the United States. We had several B 52 nuclear bombers, several B 1 strategic bombers. We had a Cobra Ball over Alaska last night, which is a missile detection plane. It detects ballistic missiles and rockets. Okay. We had a nuke sniffer plane airborne yesterday. We have another nuke sniffer plane airborne today, as you can see here. Okay, it's flying over northern Missouri right now. So we have another nuke sniffer airborne today, another doomsday plane airborne today. Okay, so U.S. nuclear forces are still on high alert. And apparently, Canada, the UK, and various allies were briefed yesterday on the Russian space nukes. Okay, so they've already been briefed on this. And U.S. House Representative Michael Waltz stated when asked why Chairman Turner decided to make the national security threat public, he said, if we don't deal with this issue appropriately, if the administration doesn't take firm action, this could be a geostrategic game changer. And that is why Chairman Turner took this unprecedented step. Okay, so Michael Waltz is calling this a geostrategic game changer. And guys, it's not about the satellites, okay? Anti-satellite weapons are nothing new, okay? And furthermore, in a nuclear war or a strategic war, satellites are really not that important because all of our nuclear forces and strategic forces are not dependent on satellites. They use astro-inertial guidance. Okay, we have a lot of different ways to guide missiles to targets. We're not reliant on satellites. And, an anti-satellite weapon is nothing new. Okay, this is about Russia putting nuclear weapons in space. Now, on February 9th, just 6 days ago, the Russians launched a rocket into space that had an unknown payload for the Russian Ministry of Defense. So it's possible that that rocket had some of those warheads. Okay. The Cosmos 2575 mission was launched by Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, using a Soyuz 2 rocket carrying an unknown payload into space for the Russian Ministry of Defense. Now, what's interesting is yesterday, SpaceX launched a classified payload for a U.S. military mission on a Falcon 9 rocket at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral. And what you're looking at here is Cape Canaveral. This is the launch of that Falcon 9, and it had some kind of classified payload. We know that there were 6 satellites on this rocket. We don't know what the mission is, okay, but we do know that 2 of the satellites were for the Missile Defense Agency and 4 of the satellites were for the Space Development Agency. Now, what's interesting is when Reagan was trying to build his space-based laser weapon system, the Star Wars program, or his space-based directed energy weapons, they were using the Space Development Agency to do that. Okay, so are we now putting nuclear warheads in space? Are we now launching some weapon to try to destroy the Russian warheads? I don't know, but for them to just suddenly launch these satellites yesterday, okay, this was completely unplanned. Okay, this was yesterday at 5:30 p.m. All right. They launched 6 satellites, 2 for the Missile Defense Agency, 4 for the Space Development Agency. Maybe they're trying to get more information and they want to see what Russia has actually deployed and get more details of it. Maybe they deployed their own warheads. Maybe they deployed some kind of countermeasure to try to destroy the warheads. There's multiple options that the U.S. has now Okay, but a lot of the senior senators are saying that the US is going to take some kind of action. What that action is, we'll have to wait and see. But this is as serious as the Cuban Missile Crisis, guys. This is a direct threat to the United States. Okay, this is just as serious as Russia putting nuclear missiles in Cuba. This is actually even worse than that, because at least in Cuba, we would detect the missiles being launched towards us. We would probably have more warning time if missiles were launched from Cuba than if they're just dropped, if the warheads are just dropped from space on top of us. Okay, we would basically have like 2 or 3 minutes to prepare in that case. Okay, so this is probably as bad as the Cuban Missile Crisis, if not worse. And the media and the government are downplaying it. Okay, they're downplaying it. They don't want panic, but this is very serious. I'm here to tell you guys that this is the Cuban Missile Crisis of our time, and this could spiral out of control because now the U.S. is going to feel threatened and they may try to react somehow. Okay, they may deploy their own warheads into space, or they may take action against Russian warheads, or they may do something. Okay, and Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, denied that there were any plans by Russia to deploy nuclear weapons into space. He called the reports a trick by the White House. Very interesting. And I want to just show you guys some of the flight paths from yesterday. Okay, here you can see a presidential doomsday plane, two B-52 nuclear bombers. One was over North Dakota, one was over the Midwest and Louisiana yesterday. There was a B-1 strategic bomber flying over New Mexico and Colorado all afternoon and evening. Okay, I mean, these bombers were up in the air for hours, guys. Normally they go up for an hour, 2, 3 hours, and then they come back down. These bombers were up all day yesterday, and then two nuclear war command and control planes in the air. Guys, I've never seen this many nuclear war planes in the air at the same time since I've been tracking flights, which is about the past 3 years. Okay, I've never seen all of these types of planes in the air simultaneously. And here's the presidential doomsday plane that was airborne yesterday. It had its transponder off for a short period of time. One of the nuclear warplanes was refueled over the continental U.S. yesterday, which is extremely rare. Okay, the Boeing E-6B Mercury. Normally, they don't refuel these over the U.S. unless there's some kind of serious situation, because we have so many of them that if one starts to run low on fuel, they can just send another one up into the air. There's no need to aerially refuel them, but there must have been something so serious that they decided to aerially refuel one of them so it could stay airborne, and they didn't have any kind of gap or something between one landing and another one launching. Okay, here's another shot of the doomsday plane that was in the air yesterday. It got aerially refueled over Illinois. I want to just share some videos here from somebody who lives right next to Stratcom in Nebraska in Offutt Air Base. Okay, they live right next to Offutt Air Base. They sent me this video of a B-1 strategic bomber that landed at Offutt Air Base yesterday, and it had its transponder off. So this is a separate B-1 than the one that I showed you guys just before. Okay, so U.S. nuclear forces are now on high alert, guys. Okay, on high alert. This is extremely serious. We are living through the Cuban Missile Crisis of our generation right now. Okay, so get prepared. Make sure you have a fallout shelter. Check out my nuclear war survival videos. Okay, it's really, really important that you know what to do if the warheads start to land. And here we have a presidential doomsday plane that came into Offutt Air Base Stratcom yesterday. You can see it's pure white. The doomsday planes and the E-6 Mercuries are white. Okay, they're easy to spot because they look different from other military planes, which are usually gray or black, but the doomsday planes are actually white. And the reason why they're white is that actually reduces their visual signature. It actually makes them harder to see when they're white. They camouflage better with the sky. Okay. And here we have the Cobra Ball missile detector plane that was airborne over the Kenai Peninsula last night. Okay, these planes can detect ballistic missiles and track their trajectories. This was the nuke sniffer plane that came into Offutt Air Base last night. And we had a massive amount of NATO reconnaissance over Poland again last night, second night in a row. Okay, massive amount of reconnaissance over Poland. We had Jake 17, a U.S. reconnaissance plane, patrolling Kaliningrad. We had multiple aerial refuelers and an AWACS plane over northwest Poland. We had a Swedish reconnaissance plane patrolling Poland's border with Belarus and Russia. So something's brewing here, guys, in Eastern Europe around Poland and the Baltics. We would not be committing this much reconnaissance to Poland if there wasn't something serious going on. Look at all these planes, guys. You know how much it costs to fuel all these planes? I mean, the wear and tear. You know, they're not going to be wasting planes like this for no reason. Okay. And then here was another recon plane that was airborne last night. As you can see, it flew along the Polish Russia border and the Polish Belarus border. And this was 2 nights ago. We had an Italian reconnaissance plane, a Swedish reconnaissance plane, NATO AWACS plane, a Polish border guard plane, okay, all patrolling the Polish-Russian border and the Polish-Belarus border, okay? So this is very concerning, okay? Very concerning. Here's another screenshot from 2 nights ago. This is the Italian reconnaissance plane and a NATO AWACS plane in eastern Poland. Okay, you know something is serious when they have to send an Italian reconnaissance plane to patrol the airspace in Poland. Okay, Italy is a good distance away from Poland. The Baltic countries are preparing for a Russian invasion. A 1,000-kilometer section of the eastern border is still being strengthened, according to the Times of the UK. And they provided this picture here that shows the likely Russian invasion routes. Okay, you can see 2 invasion routes in Estonia, one to the north of that lake there in Narva. Okay, one through Narva, and then one in southern Estonia. Then here in Latvia, 2 avenues of approach. And then in Lithuania, they're showing one coming from Kaliningrad, one coming from Belarus. So, guys, I think this is going to happen. I think Russia is going to make their move on the Baltics. And Putin said he actually prefers that Biden win the US election rather than Trump. And didn't I tell you guys that Putin preferred Biden over Trump? And didn't I warn you guys that if Trump is going to win, or if Trump looks like he's going to win, then Russia is going to invade the Baltics? And the reason why is that Biden is predictable. He's predictably weak. Okay, Putin knows that Biden is not going to really do anything. And Trump is more unpredictable. And for Putin, that represents a risk. Okay, so if it looks like Trump is going to win, I think Putin is going to go in and try to attack the Baltics. And this is probably the plan here. Okay, this is the plan. And I shared with you guys the other day information from Estonian intelligence that was saying that Russia has been doubling the number of troops along the Estonian border. Okay, Estonia is building 600 bunkers along their border with Russia. They're considering closing down their entire border to Russia, just like Finland did. They're going to be building this massive defense line. Okay, so things are really getting serious. Let me just play for you this video clip of Putin. This was yesterday. He was asked by a Russian reporter, who is better for us, Biden or Trump? And then Putin responds, Biden. And he says he is more experienced, more predictable. He is an old school politician, but we will work with any U.S. leader who the American people have confidence in. And that's pretty much it. Okay. So he says he prefers Biden because he is more experienced and more predictable. So that just confirms everything that I said, guys. I told you that he preferred Biden. And last night there was a massive missile attack on Ukraine. Here we have a video of a massive crater from a Russian missile. Look at this crater. This is absolutely insane. Multiple cruise missiles targeted the main western Ukrainian cities, including Lviv, Khmelnytsky, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Ternopil. Ballistic missiles hit Kyiv, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk. Southern Ukraine was hit as well. There were at least 3 Tu-22 bombers and 7 Tu-95 bombers involved in the missile attack last night. That's 10 bombers. Okay, that's a massive amount of bombers that Russia used. And in the Mirohorod district of the Poltava region, a warehouse was hit, as a result of which there was a fire on an area of 100 square meters without victims. More than 10 missiles flew towards Lviv. The anti aircraft defenses handled this attack well, but in Lviv, one hit on an infrastructure object was reported. And apparently 16 residential buildings in Lviv had windows blown out by the blast wave, and cars that were parked nearby were damaged. In the Kyiv region, all Russian missiles were shot down by air defense. Falling fragments of missiles were recorded in 2 settlements of one of the districts of the region. There's already information about damage to 7 private houses, several farm buildings, and a car. Houses have broken windows, damaged facades, and roofs. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, the Russian missiles attacked civil infrastructure facilities. In Zaporizhia, there was a hit on an infrastructure object. In the Khmelnytsky region, the Russian missiles struck civilian objects without casualties. And the Ukrainian military is reporting they shot down 8 of 12 Kh-101 missiles, 2 out of 2 of Caliber cruise missiles, 1 of 6 Iskander ballistic missiles, 2 of 4 Kh-59 missiles. And also Russia launched 2 S-300 missiles from the Belgrad region. Now, what's interesting is there was a Ukrainian drone that hit a massive fuel depot in Russia last night, shortly before this missile attack. Now, this missile attack is definitely a retaliation for Ukraine sinking that amphibious assault ship 2 days ago. And there was also some type of an impact reported in Belgrad, Russia. You can see this building here with the windows blown out and a good amount of damage. We don't know if this was a Ukrainian drone. This was actually yesterday. And a Ukrainian general is reporting that Russia has been using thousands of Starlink satellites so far in the war against Ukraine. And Zelensky's going to be meeting with NATO defense ministers tomorrow, and he's going to be signing some type of a bilateral security deal with France, with Emmanuel Macron. And the NATO defense ministers are having their meeting today and tomorrow. Now, there were a lot of people blowing me up about these Air Force One planes or VIP planes that were leaving Camp Springs, Maryland yesterday and going overseas. That's because of this meeting. Okay, we were sending some of our, attaches, defense attaches over there for this meeting. Okay, so no reason to panic. But this is coming from the NATO website here, and the title is NATO Defense Ministers to Address Defense Spending, Ammo Production, and Support to Ukraine. And I reported a few days ago that Germany plans to start producing 200,000 artillery shells per year. Okay, that is insane. That's just Germany alone. And Reuters is reporting that Poland has detained a man working for Russian intelligence who planned to commit acts of sabotage in Poland, including setting fire to facilities in the western city of Wrocław, security services said on Thursday. And the president of Azerbaijan said that the world is very close to starting the Third World War. And Estonia's foreign minister emphasized today that NATO has a time frame of approximately 3 to 4 years to prepare for a war with Russia. I think it's much sooner than that. I think it's this year. During a visit to Warsaw, he said, "We must understand the Russian war machine has started in full scale, the capabilities for production and the mentality as well, because Putin is controlling now everything." Okay. And the NATO leader, Jens Stoltenberg, said NATO countries have agreed to create a training center for the Ukrainian military in Poland. A group of NATO countries announced their intention to deliver 1 million drones to Ukraine. Wow. So they're going to be building a NATO training facility for the Ukrainian military in Poland, and they're going to give Ukraine 1 million drones. This is definitely going to make Poland a target now for Russia. And North Korea announced earlier today a successful test of their new surface-to-sea missile system using a Padazuri 6 anti-ship missile. The test was overseen by Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un alongside several military officials who state that the missile was airborne for over 1,400 seconds before striking a target boat in the Sea of Japan. Okay. And here we have a picture that was released by North Korean media. You can see this massive missile. Look at this thing, guys. This is an anti-ship missile. Okay, surface-to-sea missile. Okay, so this is an anti-ship missile, guys. This thing is monstrous. This is designed to take out an aircraft carrier. Okay, and here's another look at it. Okay, massive missile. And here's Kim Jong-un, okay, overseeing this launch. So very serious. And we had a lot of U.S. reconnaissance over South Korea last night. We had a combat scent plane flying along the DMZ. A combat scent is used for high priority reconnaissance, and it sends this intelligence information directly to the president and our top generals. So if one of these is airborne somewhere, it means something serious is going on, and they have to give information directly to the president and the Joint Chiefs. Okay, and we only have 2 of these planes in the entire U.S. Air Force. So if there's one of them flying somewhere, it's either training or there's something serious going on. Okay, and I don't think they're doing training along the DMZ of Korea. Okay, and there was also a U.S. Rivet joint, another reconnaissance plane, but a rivet joint does not send its intelligence directly to the president, okay, like the combat scent plane does. And the U.S. Coast Guard intercepted advanced conventional weapons en route to the Houthis, and there was a huge kaboom at a chemical factory just west of Tehran this afternoon, and Hamas has rejected another temporary ceasefire offer. And the Israeli finance minister is saying, "We will not agree to the American plan to establish a Palestinian state." And apparently many Hezbollah fighters were killed today by Israeli airstrikes that targeted a strategic point in southern Lebanon belonging to these fighters, resulting in direct human losses. So a precision strike by Israel on Hezbollah fighters. And the Israeli army has announced the withdrawal of the paratroopers reserve brigade from the Gaza Strip, which is the last reserve brigade in the Gaza Strip. Okay, so we know Israel has moved their largest regular army brigade or division up to Lebanon now, and now they're pulling out their last reserve brigade from the Gaza Strip. Okay, so they're almost done with Gaza. Once they're done with Gaza, they're going to go into Lebanon. Okay, I think it's going to happen very soon. And the Philippines just passed a law stating that any artificial islands built within the Philippines exclusive economic zone are going to be considered part of Philippines, are going to now be considered a part of Philippine territory. Wow, guys. So if China builds any islands near the Philippines, they're going to consider that part of their territory. Wow, very bold move by the Philippines. And there were a bunch of Chinese warplanes and naval vessels near Taiwan last night. Okay, the Taiwan Ministry of Defense is reporting that there were 21 Chinese military aircraft and 6 Chinese naval vessels operating around Taiwan. 14 of the aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's northern and southwestern ADIZ. Okay, so absolutely insane. And we had some interesting flights over Taiwan last night. Here we have an aerial refueler and what appears to be a NASA LiDAR mapping or some kind of NASA reconnaissance plane patrolling along the western shore of Taiwan. Okay, and it got aerially refueled. This is very, very interesting. And there was apparently a mass shooting incident in a New York City subway on Monday. Apparently, 6 people were shot and 1 person was killed. Now, what's interesting is in New York City, you cannot carry any firearms. You can't even carry a folding pocket knife, and you can't even carry pepper spray or any kind of self-defense tool. Okay, so when you go on these subways in New York City, you're basically, a sitting duck. Okay, you have nothing but your bare hands because, and also body armor is illegal in New York now as well. So you can't even bring body armor with you into the subways. It's just absolutely ridiculous, guys. I guarantee you, if it was not like that in New York City, somebody would have probably stopped this guy sooner. This is just totally preventable. Okay, but because New York City and New York are communist, people are not allowed to protect themselves. They're not allowed to have body armor, not allowed to have a firearm, a pocket knife, pepper spray, taser, nothing. Okay, just ridiculous. It makes me so mad. The Kansas City Super Bowl party shooter has not yet been charged, which is really interesting. So I'm going to do another update later on tonight. I might go live, so make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell icon down below, but just make sure you guys are getting prepared because Russia has put nuclear weapons into space, which gives us basically no warning time when they decide to launch. Okay, so think about where you would take shelter if there's a nuclear war. Okay, do you have a basement? If you live in an apartment, does your apartment have a basement? If you don't have a basement in your apartment, just know that if you go to the middle floors, like let's say you have a 5-floor apartment, if you go to the second or third floor and you stay in the center, you're actually going to be pretty safe there. Okay, because you're going to have distance from the fallout, which is going to be on the ground and on the roof. But check out my nuclear war survival videos. I'll leave links in the top right corner. And until later on tonight, take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.